Oda just confirmed not one but two massive and, dare I say, some of the most ridiculous fan theories at the same time as well. It's like killing two birds with one stone, and then going on to clone the birds and reveal that the stone was in fact a Rox. Because Stussy is a clone, and not only that, but she is a clone of Buckingham Stussy, former member of the Rox Pirates. Also, Stussy is a literal demon, ? We have a hell of a lot to answer in this video, including one extra special question, which is who is Stussy actually working for? Because I think I know, and it makes me view her completely differently. But first, we've got to deconstruct this story lasagna that Oda has laid out for us. And at the bottom layer is the long-awaited confirmation that Miss Bakken was a member of the Rox Pirates, although that isn't her full name. Her full name is Buckingham Stussy. And in this case, the official translation was smack bang on the money, because Viz chose to translate her name as Bucken, which back in the day was met with a lot of, that's kind of weird, why you do that, Viz? But it was extremely accurate. No doubt a British monarchy reference to Buckingham, which my mother always pronounces as Buckingham, and my wife's family are all from England, so you can see this like visceral physical pain on their faces when my mother says Buckingham, because it's a soft ham, it's a Buckingham. And I know that the Americans watching are probably tempted to say Buckingham the same way that you guys all say Marineford instead of Marineford, but look, that's fine. You guys invented light bulbs, the printing press, and other things, I'm sure, so we'll let you off for now. I will say that Whitebeard's alleged intimate relations with Miss Bakken makes a lot more sense, because for want of a better term, she followed the evolutionary path of Big Mom, which I refer to as the Type 2 style of aging. In One Piece, women can only age in one of two ways. Type 1 aging is more accurately referred to as not aging at all, with prominent examples including Shaki. Meanwhile, Type 2 aging is when Oda's female characters rapidly, and I mean rapidly, decline over the years and take on the more Big Mom, Kokoro, and now Bakken style aesthetic. There's no in between, it's either one or the other. But I do fear that this makes the pre-existing Rox clone ideas much more viable. As soon as Rox was introduced as a silhouetted concept, there have been trains of thought alleging that either Dragon or Blackbeard could be some sort of clone of Rox, and from here the cloning theories are only going to spiral completely out of control until the end of the series. I mean, Dragon is 55 years old, so that makes that idea very unlikely, because he would have been born just a year after Queen and Judge. So he would have existed for so many units of time before Mads formed. Blackbeard is much more youthful, yet much more rotund, 40 years old, so it's a bit more viable in his case, especially considering all of the weirdness to do with his body. So perhaps Blackbeard is even one of the alluded to failed clones. Look, age is a pretty tricky thing with clones though, because Stussy is often hinted at being quite the old woman, but realistically, if she is a clone, then she's only existed for what, like 30 years? So my guess would be that she was brought into existence as an adult, unlike say the Seraphim who were born as children, as most of us are. I have to say though, this has thrown a major spanner in the already fragile works of my mind brain, because I'm now not even sure if Miss Bakken is the real Buckingham Stussy. That's just an assumption that that's just an assumption that me have jumped to. But it was very specifically stated that Stussy was the first successful clone, meaning that there are others. And perhaps Miss Bakken is a clone as well, but one that doesn't have Stussy's special anti-aging powers. Speaking of powers, look, this is a question I wasn't expecting to ask ever, but is Stussy a vampire? Because at the end of the chapter, she does a bit of a suck of those there giraffe bloods and grows wings, and unexpected is not a strong enough word to describe how this chapter left me. While we're on giraffes though, I want to point out a frankly ridiculous connection. Because in chapter 860, where Stussy is first introduced, she also drinks a giraffe, thanks to the powers of Charlotte's smoothie, describing the experience as tasty and smooth. Tell me that that isn't the wildest piece of foreshadowing that Oda has ever just jammed into their series. To be fair, I don't necessarily think that it was purposeful foreshadowing. I actually think that One Piece is such a long and packed full of stuff series that there is a principle that all events, no matter how obscure and unlikely, are at some stage going to happen twice, like this bizarre giraffe drinking moment. But I also like how Stussy does it in the chapter. It's a very delicate bite, a bit of a meow, like a skilled doctor, a skilled giraffe doctor making an incision, as opposed to like the blah, ravenous, hungry, stereotypical vampire bite. The concept of a vampire devil fruit is not new to One Piece, although it is new to canon One Piece, because in the game Unlimited World Red, the main antagonist was Patrick Redfield, who had a bat zoan that transformed him into a kind of vampire. I mean, he didn't suck the bloods, but he did suck your life force out of you. And this sort of thing is the potential explanation for how this Stussy has remained so young, just like siphoning off the delicious youth of all of those around her. More so than vampires, Stussy at the end of the chapter gives me solid succubus vibes, presenting herself as a very seductive demoness guess. And I think it's interesting in direct contrast to the Seraphim, which are presented as angels. There's some real heaven versus hell kind of aspects that are starting to develop in One Piece, and maybe the Stussy clone is the beta test for the Seraphim that went bad, both physically and morally. But this brings up questions, so many more questions. Like, the Stussy clone cannot have been given a Devil Fruit ability by Vegapunk because you need the green blood to do that in theory, to manipulate the lineage and the stuff, science to do the science. So Stussy is either a clone that went on to eat a Devil Fruit, or she's an amalgamation of a human with another race, like how the Seraphim are with the Lunarians. And the demon race is something that has been speculated to actually exist in One Piece, with the most prominent example being Charlotte Darquois. He has these very demony batty style wings that have never been explained and are not too dissimilar from what Stussy presents here. It also instantly draws my mind to Demonia, which if Stussy does continue to be an antagonist is something I need to see, Robin versus Stussy. But also, more clones. Again, the first successful clone implies that there are others, but it also implies that there were unsuccessful clones. Cut to Edward Weevil. This is your call to get on stage as a potential failed clone of Whitebeard, or depending on your perspective, perhaps he was the perfected form of Whitebeard. Given that Queen was involved, the whole philosophy of being too popular if one was thin may have played an unfortunate role in Edward Weevil's creation. Brief tangent, we see more of the Mads cover story, and I swear that Queen has already gained weight. He doesn't look anywhere near as lean as he did in the previous page, and I'm pretty sure that at this point, he's already began stuffing himself with tech like a cyborg Christmas turkey. But like, we have entered such a weird era of One Piece. In the span of 20 or so chapters, we've gone from fulfill the ancient prophecy on the feudal samurai land, all the way to everyone in this world is either a hyper-advanced clone or has a hyper-advanced clone of them. I really did not expect One Piece to ever have such a huge emphasis on cloning. To be fair, it was very well seeded through Judge on Whole Cake Island, and I really want to go back on that arc now, because both he and Stussy were present at the wedding. And that's got to be just a little bit awkward. When your lab clone shows up at your biologically engineered son's wedding. And you know, going back on it, they are sitting at the exact same reception table in chapter 861. So I imagine that there was some awkward science-y tension happening there. But it's another one of those small things that makes Whole Cake Island so much more of a valuable arc in retrospect. Although it blows my mind just thinking about how well Mads has been set up in general. I've often said that the entire post-time skip era has been setting up Big Mom and Kaido. And that's true. But it goes so far beyond that because it's been building up Mads. Punk Hazard and Dressrosa gave us the story of Caesar Clown and the artificial devil fruits. Whole Cake Island gave us the story of Judge and his clones, as well as what we now know as a Mads clone, and Wano told the story of Queen and the bioweapons. And all of that is finally coming together now on Egghead Island. It's like Oda has some sort of checklist every time he plans an arc, which he probably does. One where he's been deliberately going, okay, so we need a Mads character in this arc. And you know, Egghead might actually be my favorite arc in a long, long time. Because it's short, action-packed, hilarious, and just chock full of long-term payoff. In other clone-based news, we now know that the Seraphim have a degree of self-control, which I suppose was programmed to make them that much more dangerous as weapons. Although in this case, it has resulted in a very poor tactical maneuver, because now any Vegapunk can just retake that command. Although the two Vegapunks that were sent to do this are very high up on my traitor list. Edison and Lilith were found to be very suspicious in the traitor video I made, and that would be a good twist to ensure a despairful ending of Egghead. That moment of victory as a Vegapunk takes command, only for them to reveal that they were some sort of disgusting traitor. Otherwise, I'm feeling pretty good about the situation, because it would then take one of the 5 elders appearing to make things go really bad otherwise. Although who knows, maybe there's a clone of the 5 elders just hanging around somewhere, because nothing, and I mean nothing, is out of the question anymore with One Piece. Zoro versus Kaku was everything I hoped for and more. I especially enjoyed Zoro's line about being so sick of fighting animals after Wano, and I was a bit surprised that Kaku had also awakened his devil fruit, which look ridiculous, but so awesome. It evokes the same sort of feeling in me that Luffy's Gear 5th does. I wonder who awoke their fruit first, Kaku or Lucci, because whoever did it clearly just copied the other one. Both of them have the funky black flame effect happening, and it looks like this is Oda's new chosen way to depict awakened Zoans, which is good because it does simplify things, and if we see Zoan users in the future, there's less argument about whether or not they've awakened. Although it does create all sorts of new arguments, because Kaido, he had those flames, but were they just part of the base fruit? My absolute favorite part of the chapter though was watching Lucci and Kaku get betrayed by Stussy. It's just us. And Lucci's face when he saw that betrayal was like, betrayal? Us? And after they betrayed us on Water 7, I can't help but feel a sort of schadenfreude of, yeah, you got betrayed. Remember when you guys were pricks to us? It doesn't feel good, does it? But the question remains, why did Stussy betray them? At this point, she has legitimately become one of the most interesting characters in One Piece. Very Bartholomew Kuma in that she has multiple identities and allegiances, seemingly within all aspects of the global power structure. She's an underworld emperor, she's a CP0 agent, and a rogue vampire likely working for someone else. With the first thought being that she is the ally that Vegapunk was talking about. I hope not, and I really don't think it would have been possible to conduct a snail call without either Kaku or Lucci noticing, but otherwise it would make a lot of sense. However, the other option is that because Stussy is a clone of a former Rocks Pirates member, she may be in league with the man who has inherited the will of Rocks, Mr. Marshall D. Teach. So cue the Stussy is the 10th Titanic captain theories. Imagine if Blackbeard took command of the Seraphim. That's very much the extra push he needs to go full main antagonist. But we could also have a more standard and boring solution as well. Those happen. Because the fact is that Rob Lucci, he was a bad cat, and he ignored the orders to wait for Kizaru. So Stussy could still be working for the world government and just salvaging the situation as best she can. However, the opening of the chapter has me thinking. Oda did something very, very clever, because we began with Vegapunk's past notes about someone who he considers to be human, which was juxtaposed against images of Jewelry Bonnie. And initially, it made me think that he was referring to Bonnie as a result. So when Stussy was revealed to be the clone, I was all like, you got me there, Oda, nice red herring. But now, I'm kind of flipping back to the other position. And I'm starting to think, what if this is a double red herring? Again, first successful clone implies that there were more, and perhaps Stussy is a vehicle being used to introduce the concept of cloning before we ultimately reveal that Jewelry Bonnie is also a clone. And maybe that's why Vegapunk and Kuma were so insistent that she never know the truth. Perhaps the original Bonnie has long since departed this world, and a distraught Kuma went to Vegapunk to try and bring his daughter back to life. And we'll be expanding upon all of that and more in the next video.